Thank you, Larry. All right, so let me start from a brief introduction of what we do, okay, what are our specialties, what is our DNA, key DNA. Bardo Lawrence already introduced some of the key areas we focused on. So starting from data, we are strong believers in the value of data first. So our 30 years experience tells us that all organizations who faced the enhancement of their technology to retrieve data, store data, and use data in the processes now are leading the market. So this is pillar number one. Pillar number two is analytics. So data by themselves don't speak. So analytics is the language we need to translate data into, and only from analytics we can get insights and transform processes across the lending process in the banks. And third is solutions. So only the integration of data and analytics into cutting-edge technology can enable lenders and organizations to put in place and roll out data-driven processes. So this is what we do, in essence. Starting from the evolution roadmap in terms of sophistication levels that different organizations are facing today. Starting from the, what's this one? Yes. Okay, so starting from the most basic approach to the most advanced. In this chart, I want to present just what is the revolutionary roadmap. So increase the complexity, of course, means the increase of business benefit. Starting from the first box, adoption of strict policy rules is what some lenders start doing some years back. Some are still doing this. So this is the very first move from a manual process into an operation and a decision driven by strict policy rules. I will articulate a bit more on each of them in the following slides, but just to give you an idea of what is the evolution over time. The second step in the evolution is the adoption of scorecards, typically generic or judgmental scorecards. Some lenders in some less mature markets are still there. And when this happens, typically the focus is on originations, not on the other phases of the customer life cycle. So origination only and expert-driven scorecard from industry expert providers. The third step is the development of bespoke scorecards. So whenever data are made available, scorecards are developed, and some countries, some organizations are facing this now. Some organizations are now rolling from the development of bespoke scorecards into the utilization of these models into their processes. So this is most organizations globally, let me say, still are. Okay, so the usage of a scorecard to affect their lending processes and customer management processes. Some lenders moved into adoption of champion challenger, which is more advanced, more sophisticated. To my knowledge and to our experience, this is still rarely adopted. It's a technology which is there, has been out for years, but few organizations today use this kind of technology to improve their knowledge curve while adopting data-driven strategies. And the last one is optimization, leveraging operational reserves or artificial intelligence. So the initial steps from some disruptors company. So starting from adoption of strict policy rules, there are pros and cons in these approaches. Starting from the pros, data analysis is needed to derive these rules, so this is a good thing. Even to implement such an approach, organizations need to put in place some analytics. It brings to a consistent and partially automated approach, and it brings risk under control to some extent. What are the cons? The cons is that usually all of this is system hard-coded, so lack of flexibility in the changes of the policy rules. It's usually too conservative, because the adoption of policy rules in sync brings to a reject rate, talking about origination, which is usually too conservative to our experience. And also difficult to measure the predictive power of these policy rules, because typically being strict, you don't have any rejected, you don't have any accept account to measure the capability of these variables or policy rules to predict the future. So high level, this is the pros and cons. The adoption of scorecards, so judgmental scorecards, the process that implies the improvement of data capture, so that even if the scorecard development is not a statistical one, it's purely judgmental, this will force organizations to capture data in a more consistent and better quality fashion. It also allows to relax some of the policy rules. So as I was saying before, these policy rules, if applied strictly, can bring to a too conservative approach. In the implementation, adoption of a scorecard can relax some of these policy rules and also increase awareness in the tools. So scoring will be one of the tools which will be more well known within the company. The cons is that usually behavioral and collection models are not covered, so it's very hard to develop judgmental behavioral customer management or collection models. The power of this model, the discriminatory power, is suboptimal. And also local factors are quite difficult to embed. So typically the best practice approach is very rarely, is quite hard to inject some local factors into this model. The bespoke of development of bespoke scorecards, of course, it implies deep data analysis, which is a pro to me. So this will socialize all the benefits and the outcome from analysis within the bank. The back testing of the models will increase the confidence within the organization, because this will prove how the model can be effective when put into operation. And of course, compared to the judgmental scorecard, the predictive power is higher. The con is not a con, it's more a limitation than a con, is that good quality data is needed in order to back this kind of project. The redesign of workflows to drive decisions based on scoring. This is very important. So focus, the pro of using scoring to take decisions across the whole life cycle of the credit is to focus effort, for example, on more complex application. In essence, automations. So whenever you take a decision based on scoring, you can focus the attention of the underwriters, in the example of origination, just on the most critical applications, where the risk detection is more difficult to be done automatically. All processes will be streamlined, because most of the decisions will be taken based on the scoring, and also this will increase the customer satisfaction, because the streamline of the process, of course, will bring to a shorter time to dispersal. One of the cons, again, more a limitation than a con, is that sometimes this approach meets the resistance in adoption within the bank. So typically the network or even at HQ level, it's not always easy to penetrate and adopt this approach in a strict way. So some education, internal and especially with the network branches at branch level, has to be done in order to create awareness and let everyone understand the power of such an approach. The adoption of champion challenger, as I was saying, is still quite rarely adopted, but it's an extremely powerful tool. Very, very powerful. Why? Because it is the tool which allows to measure in an objective way the effectiveness of alternative strategies. So we have seen a few examples, fortunately. So the adoption of a different level of automation. So where to set the cutoff to accept or reject automatically. You can try alternative approaches and create a referral area which is either very small or bigger. And then you can measure, rolling out both of these strategies in parallel, which is the best of the two approaches. And you can empirically measure which of the two brought to a better results to your bottom line. Also, this approach allows a continuous improvement. So it's an accelerator of the learning curve, because the evidence of the outcome and the comparison of alternative strategies brings to a clear indication of which path you need to follow to improve your decision process. One of the limitations, or the difficulties here in this case, more than a limitation, is the classification of alternative strategies in case of conflicting KPIs. So it is not good to focus only on one KPI, such as the reduction of bad rate. This is just one of the angles you should cover. Simultaneously, you should also keep an eye, for example, on the increase of the business, the increase of utilization of credit lines. So somehow move from a purely risk-oriented approach to a more profitable-oriented. And this brings to a need of considering more than one single KPI simultaneously to assess which was the best strategy to be deployed. And of course, proper tools are needed. So only some specific, very specific decision engines can use this type of technologies. This is not something which typically comes out of the box from a core banking system, just to be clear. Optimization and operational research, artificial intelligence techniques, we are still in seminal phase. Okay, so we have seen a few examples in a few projects. As of today, we can say that there is an increment in terms of accuracy and performance, but it's quite marginal. So we don't still see a big added value from this approach. What will happen probably is that only when more data will be available and such techniques will be a better fit to manage this data, this is when we will have an uplift in terms of performance. So alternative data, which Larry will talk about, will also give you the context on where this kind of approaches is to be preferred. Okay, said that. The usage of scoring and automation can and should be applied across all phases of client relationship. So we have a few examples. So initiate is what is typical called application or origination, and the actions, as you can see, across the different stages of life cycle are totally different. So the same tool, which is core, which predicts more or less the same thing, so bad debt or risk, sometimes classified with slightly different nuances, but in essence risk, can bring to very different decisions. So in case of origination, of course, what you can leverage is a decision in the accept or reject, or the determination of terms and conditions. So scoring can be one of the inputs, for example, for risk-based pricing or determination of the duration of a loan. But that's it. Okay? This is what you can decide at origination point. The goal, of course, is to onboard business in line with the risk appetite. So cut-off setting is, of course, derived from your risk appetite. During the growth phase, so when you want to grow your portfolio, I'm talking about existing clients in this case, so upsell to profitable clients or the reduction of exposure on risky clients are the actions you can take. And this is typically more appropriate in case of revolving portfolios, which is usually either small SMEs or credit cards. The goal is to retain a profitable customer base. So different goal system. So what actions should be deployed to existing clients even with a good behavior, but with a high risk of future delinquency. So scoring as a trigger to design the early warning processes. Collect is managing your delinquent customer base. So segment portfolio, delinquent portfolio, again based on scoring across different dimensions like a balance at risk is one of the most popular KPIs used for segmentation. And the goal here is to optimize cash flow in a controlled fashion. So balance cash flow and the cost of the actions to recover bad debt. Okay, so we think that if this is the context and the goals are more or less clear, it's a lot of work. Okay, we have to be aware that it's a lot of work, especially if we want to face all of these phases and manage all of this simultaneously. So what we recommend here, just a few tips from CRIF, from our experience. Firstly, is to plan to deliver a quick win first. So in organizations which are changing, transforming themselves into a data-driven company, what we recommend to do is start with something which is controlled, simple, but which will increase the awareness of such tools within organizations. And typically this is quick wins, something which can be easily implemented in a short time frame, and the benefit of which can be measured in a short time frame. Second is the sync between analytics and technology. So unfortunately, we have seen some failures of projects, and one of the reasons has been also sometimes the lack of sync between the analytics lab, so what the data scientist guys do in their lab, and what is then deployed into production. So all of this has to be kept in sync, because otherwise what you develop in your laboratory environment is not then implementable into production. And this, of course, can bring a lot of frustration and decrease the awareness of the power of such tools into your processes. Third tip is to plan for educational sessions with the stakeholders in order to socialize the benefits of this new approach. So it's not, we don't have to take for given that organizations, all stakeholders are ready to receive this message. So some educational sessions are usually recommended. Provide the impact analysis on the main KPIs. So this basically means that talking about the statistical indicators in terms of power of the models is not enough, especially when organizations are moving into taking this journey. So you need to, again, educate and let very clearly understand what is the benefits of a bottom line. So you can easily measure not only the power, discriminatory power of the models, you can also measure what is the bottom line benefit of the adoption of the new tools, the what-if analysis, in essence. And this is very important to bring on board all the stakeholders of the bank. Okay, that's what I mentioned. Okay. Second to bottom point, reporting. I will say something in my last session, okay, before dinner about reporting. But it's very important to be ready with a structured reporting and infrastructure even before rolling out any of the models, in order to be sure that whatever has been rolled out, will be tracked and monitored, and be sure that the decisions we take are consistent with what has been planned during the development phase. So reporting is crucial, and this is why we will dedicate a session at the end. Last is, I was talking about quick wins and also the full life cycle of the customer. Recommendation here is to focus on what is the most critical, what is the pain point of the bank. Is it by debt? So does this mean that maybe it's more, it's better to tackle first collection? Is it origination, the quality of onboarding, which is the pain point of the bank? So understanding where to start from is very important. So between customer management and new clients onboarding, you can quite clearly identify what is the pain point answering to these questions, looking at these KPIs. So in case this new loan business request, new loans request is shrinking, or if you are facing client attrition and your share of wallet is shrinking, if there is an increase, if you want to increase the revenue streams on the existing customer base, or if you want to manage NPL, or in case of the adoption of regulatory bodies which impose some risk management, risk measurement. This is the typical context in which the focus should be on customer management. On the other side, if you are in the phase in which you are launching new products, or you want to tackle new client segments, or new channels to deliver your products, or some new data sources are available in the market, or you want to increase the market share, or when your existing customer base is shrinking, this is when you should, on the contrary, focus more on the new clients onboarding. We talked about scoring, and we need to be very aware that scoring is just one of the components when you will redesign your process. So as you can see, both in the acquisition phase and the customer management phase, the decisioning engine is the heart of the solutions. Some interface will be needed, of course, either with the loan origination or the customer management or collection platform. And as you can see, score is one of the components, but also you will have to implement in the brain of your processes policy rules, lockout rules, segmentation rules in order to split your population into clusters and develop specific scorecards for specific portfolios. And then also analytics will take care of designing what is the recommended action. So it doesn't end with the scoring. So in our approach, at the end of the scorecard development, the analysis of portfolio data will also bring to suggest what is the best decision to be taken. Okay. Now we've been talking about lenders so far as if they were independent and not dependent from the customer behavior. In reality, you also have to consider that the behavior of customers is changing over time. So this is what we think, how we think the consumers are evolving. So the 2030 consumer will be radically different from what he is today. It will be omni customer. Amazonization is another phenomenon. I will say something in the next slide. They see bank as a one-stop shop. Typically they are self-directed and also they are used to a la carte approach. What does it mean? So omni-customer, we mean that online and offline are not now, no longer coexist. Okay, so there's no more separation between online and offline. Consumers now tend to see a bank, a lender, more as a brand than as a specific channel through which they can access to their products and services. Amazonization is, of course, a phenomenon we are facing. So consumers will be more and more used to this smooth, simple digital customer experience. So somehow we've been spoiled by Amazon, and now the consumers are more and more demanding for their customer experience. One-stop shop. Consumer look for a single point of entry, so either the purchase of goods and services, but also the aggregation and comparison. So this is now the common approach and the common attitude. So compare offers. They're also self-directed, meaning that they're used today more than in the past to gather information and make their own decision based on factual information they can collect from the web, typically. And finally, a la carte. So consumers do not look for long-term relationships, so they feel free to cherry pick from products and services from different lenders, depending on the best condition they find in the market. So this means that regulation, the fee margins that most of the lenders are now facing, the volatile volatility, which is a consequence of what we just talked about, and the presence of non-traditional competitors brings to the conclusion that on the 50 largest global banks, 3 out of 4 now pledge themselves to some form of customer experience transformation. So whenever you will implement a new process, hopefully data-driven, driven by scoring and predictive analytics, all of this has to be taken into consideration when rolling out the new process. So to sum up, risk analytics can play a crucial role to disrupt lending processes. Different level of sophistication can bring to different benefits, but transformation programs need to be planned very carefully. It is crucial to set priorities in order to ensure good benefits. And lastly, the process engineering needs to take into consideration the evolving customer behavior and their expectations. And this brings to the conclusion of my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take it now.
Maybe then this microphone. Maybe you'll have to speak up. I don't think this is working.
Okay. You have mentioned Amazonization of the customers, and this is a very now upcoming phenomenon in the consumer industry. So typically, what we have seen in our market is that the traditional scorecards that we used to implement for different lending products are now not applicable on the scorecards or for the lending product that we are planning or are in the process of giving to customers through the digital channels. So how do we, because the variables, that set of variables that were applicable on traditional conventional products now are not applicable on the lending products through the digital channels.
Okay, so let me try to answer. I see two possible alternatives. The first is the channel you're talking about typically is a segmentation criteria. So we recommend to develop specific scorecards for specific segments based on the channel of acquisition. So this can at least restrict the profile of the applicant to a specific profile, typically younger, digitally savvy, and a specific behavior, of course. So I understand why characteristics don't play the same role in the different segments. It's pretty normal. Second, when I was talking about Amazonization, I was also referring to the processes you need to implement. So the consumer has higher expectations in terms of how fast, quick, and simple the process of getting a loan should be. So you need to look at both sides.
I think what, to cater to asking another part is, I think what needs to be added is using unconventional data sources to couple up with the digital channels. And that should do the serve the purpose.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. So when we talk about the alternate data sources, as he is referring to, in lending, those data variables are so much positive kind of nature that we cannot create the target for the bad or good from those data sources. So that's another issue. I think. How do you take?
You mean they're not predictive, or they're not?
If it is a predictive and
yes.
The person who is looking for the loan has a thin file or do not have a file, so what would be the process then? How do you tackle that?
But then again, predictability needs to
No, but there is a positivity of the nature of the variable. Okay. Because that I cannot correlate with the bad or good.
Because you don't have any, you mean?
You don't have a target.
Okay. For me, in this case, anyway, this data can clearly identify patterns. Okay, so you can split your population into different clusters based on their characteristics, their usage of the mobile phone, how they use the social media. So basically, the typical data sources. And then I would very cautiously implement something small, okay, and champion challenger again. So learn by experience. Because in case of the lack of information, this is the best you can do. So roll out little by little and experiment, basically. But champion challenge can help a lot because you can speed up the learning curve, because you can test alternative profiling or offering based on different profiles and then learn from experience. Shorten loans if possible, as short as possible, and then learn.
But the other question arises is that I will ask you about is what parameters or what factors you have seen in the advanced markets, especially related to the credit lending through the mobile channels and alternate channels. What factors you have seen are important?
Okay, so we made some analysis from two different data sources. One is the device data, so what you can retrieve from a device, and it's quite a granular information, believe me. So anything can be downloaded and analyzed, from the number of contacts in your directory, the usage of the phone, inbound, outbound calls, time of a call, and you can create tons of variables based on this. This information is correlated to risk. So we have some evidence that this information is correlated to risk. Believe it or not, the longer the calls is more risky. The app installed, okay, the number of apps installed has a correlation with risk. And then we made some other experiments based on the social data, and what we tracked was the like to the public pages of Facebook, again to create some profiling and clustering of clients. And again, we could find some correlation. Marketing is a better application, honestly, because the application of these techniques to marketing is much more powerful. But also risk can take some advantages.
May I ask that it's true that also let's call it more developed market, but the definition now is not so clear of what does it mean more developed market, because for some technology, India is far more developed than Italy, for example, or vice versa. What in any case we are seeing is that there is still not enough sharing of data between different players. So typically when you have this kind of digital channel, the channel has a lot of information about the customer that maybe they collect, but players, financial players are not able to use, or because it's difficult to share, or because there was not a consent, or because the technology don't speak enough. By the way, I think Lawrence is going to speak about that later, because also as a CRIF we have a kind of project to share that. But the reality is that the data that are collected to this digital channel are still not, in most of the cases, properly used to take a decision. In many cases, not even decision about the business of the channel, but not for sure for the lender. There are few examples, and when you get this data, you see that there are correlations. So, for example, I don't know, in Europe, the bureau typically start to track the channel, and at least the channel. Was a web channel, was an agent, or was a branch, with kind of branch, and the credit bureau score modeling that are behind the credit bureau score in Europe, where typically you have 20 different modules, take into consideration that, but are very, very basic information. The information that the channel collect are used, but not really used.
Actually, I was just asking because I just wanted to know if you guys have experience in building scorecards for the digital channels.
You mean customers from the digital or using device data?
Using device.
Using device data. We have a couple of experiments, so we are still in the laboratory phase.
Okay.
So for what we call financial inclusion for customers that they don't have bureau data, what we are experimenting today are, let's say, three different kind of approach. One is device data, so taking data from mobile, and where the problem is that country by country, the regulation and also the behavior are very different. Again, an example, if you go in India, the content of SMS text is super relevant for this kind of score, because you get a lot of information about your payment. So you paid that, you received that, you have this amount, things like that, no? But in many other countries you don't have this. So you are going more to measure what kind of app you are using, the usage of the phone, the kind of app that you have, and things like that. This is one.
One comment here is that countries where Android is more popular is much better. Because
okay, this is the second part, but also this is continually changing. So also the certification of the SDK that is on the mobile from Android, Apple basically doesn't certify and doesn't allow to get anything or almost anything, is continually changing. The second approach is what we call psychometric score. So we have developed a psychometric score. So, but basically is another way to do an application score, but not based on sociological data, but based on the reaction on some kind of text pushed through to the channel, very quick but very emotional, let's say. The third one, that is for me the most tricky one, and honestly I can say that there are not clear results. In my opinion, is social network data. But yeah, you have a lot of information, but to say that is really clearly and in a stable way correlated, we cannot say honestly. We have developed models, we are testing, we are trying to combine the three different models, because
but for marketing analytics, it was an evolution.
Marketing, yes.
One of the key challenges that I understand that you will be facing is that our market is still too immature to for the digital channels from payment acceptance and payment as well, both channels. So we're still striving towards that. That's the reason maybe you're still unable to hunt for risk indicators or risk variables for your scorecard.
No, actually we are trying to build a scorecard for the digital channels. Because what we have seen is that the conventional scorecard is not applicable on the digital channel, and that we are right now the challenge is facing.
Luca, just one query associated with whatever being discussed. When you talk about these alternate credit rating and analytics, is it being implemented in any geography or anywhere else in any bank on a commercial level, that they are using these alternate channels on a commercial level to start lending? Is it happening anywhere as we speak, or are we just working out models and then as we strengthen them, then we'll talk about it?
No, they are starting to use, not alone.
Yeah.
So maybe with a traditional application score to double check that is not
So
completely
weightage is there.
diverging. The other relevant thing that we suggest is also to not to use only at the application stage, but for example, if you use for things like credit card or product where you can change the credit limit, they are more relevant, the information that you collect later, to tune this. So start small with the credit limit, then continue to take data, not only at the time of application, and upgrade the credit limit based on other information.
So
that you get.
move the focus to customer management.
There is no magic trick, honestly. So there is not a magic trick to score someone that is unbanked and never got a loan. So there is not magic trick.
Thank you. Thank you very much.